Welcome to Worldview Matters, discussing controversial issues, discerning current events, defending biblical Christianity. No topic off limits. And now, here's your host, David Fiorazo.
Hey friends, thank you so much for tuning in. We are going to jump right into it again as we did Friday's show with John Haller. We covered a lot of ground, but he's with us again. We're doing more information on Israel, what's happening, as much of the recent news as we can, but we're going to talk about what's important. There's an ignorance today about true history, not just biblical truth and biblical history, but real world history. We're going to talk about that with John Haller. John, welcome back to Worldview Matters. Good to have you again.
Good to be back with you, David.
All right. So where do you want to start today? Because I know there's a lot of things going on. A lot of people were scared of, the reaction to Israel responding, retaliating to the Hamas attack. And there's just chaos. And where do you want to start today?
Well, let me start with sort of where a lot of us Christians, and look, there's tremendous division within the body of Christ over the issue of Israel.
And there
I guess you could call me a Christian Zionist. Zionist. I am not a Christian scientist, a Christian Zionist.
I'm glad you clarified.
And I believe in a future role for the nation of Israel, that this is the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. I think we're seeing it play out right in front of us. I did a talk in Texas recently at the Hope for Our Times conference, and my title of my topic was Gradually Then Suddenly. So we live in these prophetic times. There's all these Bible prophecies. We know that most of these Bible prophecies will be fulfilled in a very short, compressed period of time before the Lord's return. So I'm a futurist. I believe that Jesus will return and set up a millennial kingdom where he will rule and reign from Jerusalem in a 1,000-year millennium. So that's where I come from. And I come from that for a perspective. Let me give you an idea as to what happened, because Israel was kicked out of the land. They've been kicked out of the land a number of times. In fact, Friday, we mentioned that 3 weeks ago, Benjamin Netanyahu went to the UN to give his speech. In his speech, he started with Deuteronomy, the biblical passage in Deuteronomy, where Moses brought the children of Israel together near the time of his death and said, I want you to learn the blessings and the curses. If you follow my commandments, there will be blessing. If you ignore them, there will be curses. When they came into the land, Moses died, Joshua brought them in, then the conquest, this would have been around, 1300 BC. They conquered the land, but as they conquered the land, Joshua took them to the biblical city of Shechem. And there in biblical Shechem, as you sit in the valley between two mountains, Mount Ebal, where they have recently found Joshua's altar, and Mount Gerizim, which is the home of the Samaritans, still live there to this day. The people who are mentioned in the Bible as Samaritans, there's a small community of them. And they put half of the people of Israel on one mountain, the mountain of curse, and half on the mountain of blessing. And this was no small thing, because if we know from biblical times, this probably involves somewhere 2 million or more people. So they're in that land. And can you imagine what happens? They're shouting the blessings on one hand. If they keep it, the curses on the other hand. And Netanyahu made reference to this, and he said, we've had curses. We're seeing curses in the world, but we're also seeing blessings. And he talked about peace. But in the Bible, in Ezekiel chapter 36, one of my favorite passages, and I'll paraphrase it because we're short on time, is Prophet Ezekiel looked down the corridors of history. He wrote in the 560, 580 BC period during the Babylonian captivity. And he said, listen, the people of Israel will be brought back into the land at some point in the future. Now, they came back partially and rebuilt the temple, and then they were booted out by the Romans in 70 AD in the diaspora, and then they started to come back in the late 19th century in the Zionist movement. But I believe this is fulfillment of prophecy, because Ezekiel said, I will bring you back into the land. And I'm not going to bring you back into the land because you've done good. I kick you out of the land into among the nations, but because you weren't following my law, you weren't obeying me And when you went into the nations, you played the harlot, you played the whore among the nations. But I promised that I would bring you back, and my holy name is at stake. So I'm going to bring you back. And when I bring you back in unbelief, I will put in you a new heart, and you will know the Lord. So I believe we're in this process, and the land has transformed. In fact, there's a very famous book called Innocents Abroad by Mark Twain. And in the 1860s, he made a pilgrimage to Israel, what is modern day Israel. And he had a number of stations. He didn't really like it. He called the Sea of Galilee was, quote, a solemn, a saliness, tentless lake as unpoetical as any bathtub on earth. The Church of the Nativity, he said, was tricked out in the usual tasteless style observable in all of the holy places of Palestine. He also said, as he rode through the Jezreel Valley on a horseback, he said, there is not a solitary village throughout its whole extent. This is where the city of Megiddo is located. Not for 30 miles in either direction. There are 2 or 3 small clusters of Bedouin tents, but not a single permanent habitation. One may ride 10 miles hereabouts and not see 10 human beings. Of all the lands there are for dismal scenery, I think Palestine must be the prince. Can the curse of the deity beautify a land? So we see that this has changed. And I have pictures in the Doug Hershey did a great book on sort of Israel then and now. And one of the pictures in there are sand dunes along the Mediterranean, which today is this multi-skyscraper city of Tel Aviv. Totally transformed. The pictures are taken in 1909. So Israel changed under the early Zionist movement. The Ottomans controlled that area at the time. They've lost in World War I. Things started to fall apart. The British came in, took over. And in 1920, there was a conference in San Remo, Italy, where they decided to divide the land between west of the Jordan River to the Mediterranean. That's sort of where they get the West Bank of the Jordan River. It's kind of a misnomer. And then Transjordan. The Transjordan was given to the Hashemite family, which is being kicked out of running the holy places in Mecca and the Islamic holy places of Mecca and Medina by the Saud family in the early 1920s. That consolidated into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in about 1932 or 1933. The Hashemite kingdom, now King Abdullah II, they were given the opportunity. The British appointed a guy called the Waqf. It was a man named the Hajj Aman al-Husseini because he had made a Hajj, a pilgrimage to Mecca. He was appointed as charge of the Temple Mount area, the holy places in Jerusalem. And that exists today under the Jordanian government. The Hajj was virulently anti-Israel. He hated Jews. He instituted a number of pogroms against Jews. And when a certain leader came to rise to power in the 1930s in a country called Germany, the Hajj Aman al-Husseini went to Germany to assist that ruler in plans to eradicate the Jews. He came back. He was in control of the Temple Mount. Now, at the time in the Temple Mount district, it's about 35 acres. You can see, well, there's a picture of it right behind me in the photograph here. And you're looking at just over my left shoulder is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. See, I point this way. This is the Al-Aqsa Mosque right there. And then, of course, the Dome of the Rock, which there it is. It's blocked by my microphone. But the Al-Aqsa Mosque is a holy place of Islam, they say. And it was built there in the 700s AD. Prior to that, they had built the Dome of the Rock in the late 600s. It's not a mosque. It's a commemorative building. Now the Muslims call the whole 35-acre compound Al-Aqsa. And this is important. So in 1929, this Hajj Aman al-Husseini, who, by the way, later seems to be pretty accurate, he had a nephew that he trained and mentored. His nephew's appears, it's certainly a relative. That person's name was Yasser Arafat, who headed up the PLO, created by the Russians in about 1964 as sort of a propaganda thing, the Palestine Liberation Organization. So he's put out a thing, the Jews are coming to destroy Al-Aqsa. That resulted in, I think it was 1929, front page news in the New York Times at the time, about 80 Jewish men, women, and children were slaughtered by Muslims in Hebron, about 30 miles south, near the tomb of the patriarchs, where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their wives are buried, the patriarchs and matriarchs of Israel. And so that was the typical program. So Israel, then 1947, this situation, of course, we had the Holocaust, and Jews were coming back from all over the world to Israel. Mm-hmm. And so the UN met in 1947 and approved the partition of the land into Jordan and Israel. And then Israel declared independence in 1948. There was a war immediately. And then in 1967, the Palestinian or the Arab nations surrounding Israel were going to attack. Israel attacked first, destroyed the Jordanian and Egyptian air forces, and in a stunning 6-day war, took over the entire Sinai Peninsula, all of the Golan Heights, and everything in Israel west of the entire nation of Israel west of the Jordan River. It was a stunning victory.
Yeah.
And that's sort of led to the Palestinian problems that we have today. So,
John,
I was going to say, there were subsequent wars to that. There was a war in 1973 on Yom Kippur, a surprise attack, and that led, I think I mentioned a little bit about this on Friday, Golda Meir. That war was turned around mainly because Richard Nixon decided, contrary to a lot of the advice of the advisors, to give weapons and arms to Israel. They won, but Golda Meir was out of office within 6 months.
And that's interesting.
I think we're going to see the same thing
with Netanyahu. Yeah, that's interesting. You didn't mention that Friday, because I was thinking Golda Meir got that, or made that famous 3 a.m. phone call to the president of the United States at the time, Richard Nixon, who, when he was a young man, according to tradition, his mother said, one day you are going to be in a position to help Israel. And Richard Nixon's mom said, Richard, answer that call. Now, you can look up history on that. I found that to be kind of fascinating, because
it's very interesting.
Yeah, there were some them anti-Semites in the Nixon administration and in our government. But anyway, he did help Israel with weaponry, ammunition, and the war. That changed the face of that war. But John, I want to go back to something here. We kind of skipped over. You mentioned the Dome of the Rock and Abraham. This is about, 3,500 years ago. You've got a better handle on that than I do. The Jews have had a religious and ethnic connection to that area and the coastlands since Abraham's time. It was their kingdom, their temple, their heritage. And then, of course, they were, forced out of the land, but they came back in the 1940s, as you just mentioned. What's fascinating to me is the land, as you can read in Scripture, that's prophetic. The land was desolate. It was a desert. The Bible calls it a wasteland. And today, Israel, I believe, is one of the top 2 or 3 producers and exporters of produce and technology and all these. But the land is fertile. So that's miraculous. To me, that's God's hand there. I'd love for you to share your thoughts on that before we move on.
One of the most moving things you can do in Israel, you should, if you ever go, is go to the Yad Vashem. I've been there a number of times. And the last time we went, about 2017, it was a new one that had not been there. I don't remember when they built a new one. But at the end, you go through this oppressive thing of all the things of the Holocaust, the shoes, the jewelry, the things that they dug up around these death camps in Europe. And, rail cars that they had used to transport Jews and the actual ones. And it's just this oppressive. You go through the Hall of Memories where they have a notebook with a page for each person. They have about 3 million that they've been able to identify of the 6 million killed. You go through the Children's Museum, which will just rip your heart out. There's no pictures. It's just points of light to demonstrate all the lights that were of children that were extinguished in the Holocaust. And then at the end, you walk up this ramp, and as you get to the top of this ramp, you see this expanse of this modern city of Jerusalem with trees and lush and green and all this stuff. And it personally moved me to tears. I love Israel. I love the Jewish people. It's a great land of opportunity. It's not, this is not to be construed that I think everything that they do is perfect. They have a lot of the evils that we see in our own society there as well. Tel Aviv, probably touts itself as the best place for the rainbow flag on the planet. You can take that with what it means.
Yeah.
But it's just an absolutely incredible thing. I think somewhere in the order of 1 billion trees have been planted in Israel since the founding of the nation of Israel in 1948. Wow. So it's green, it's lush. They have pioneered drip irrigation. They brought the desert, and some of these deserts, like down in the Judean wilderness we read about in the Bible, they might get 2 inches of rain a decade. And it's used for agriculture in many respects. So it's the land has come back, but it's not with that. It's very divided. Of course, we have the Palestinian, Arab, and Israeli conflict that's rearing its ugly head as we speak right now. There is a ground operation being prepared to go into Gaza to eradicate this problem that led to the terror attacks on October 7, in which over 1,300 Israelis have been confirmed dead. The number changes daily. And then the initial airstrikes in Gaza, 1,300 Palestinians, but within Israel, it has not really been covered that much in the news. 1,500 Palestinian terrorists were killed. And there's many, in fact, there was one who was taken to an Israeli hospital, and literally people came to lynch him. He was being cared for in an Israeli hospital. So process that in your head. A Palestinian terrorist being cared for in an Israeli hospital in the midst of a war. This is very unusual.
John, before we go on, can I ask you your take on the speculation with all Israel's advancement in technology and their weaponry and their systems of defense and the walls and the Iron Dome and the fences? Was this some way an inside job? Were people on the inside that were able to do something with the fence? Because they're supposed to be notified, apparently, whenever someone were to try to climb the fence or touch the fence or whatever on the southern border. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that and what we're hearing as far as there's no way it could have just happened all from the outside?
Intelligence failures happen all the time. Israel is very, very complicated. They have many enemies. As I said, Iran has been funding terror cells in the West Bank, which has caused them to shift resources. I think the one thing that's, and I understand everybody's concern about that. I have talked to many, many people in Israel, even people who do not like the current government under Bibi Netanyahu. They hate it. Not a one of them gives much credence that this was an inside job. There were intelligence failures, but the notion that this was planned by Israel is, in my opinion, this is a regurgitation of the medieval anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish tropes that the Jews are trying to control everything in the world and causing all the wars. I do not buy it. I reject it. I think it's anti-Semitic. So I think we need to be very careful as we talk about this. I think we need to be honest. We need to discuss that there were intelligence failures, but this was give the enemies of Israel, who are described in Psalm 83 prophetically, and I think this is a prophecy playing out in our midst right now.
Yes.
They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. Give the Iranians, this is an Iranian op. I mentioned Friday that the Iranians on newspapers say that we are the hands and feet and mind of Hamas. And this was a very cleverly orchestrated operation. I believe they used the terror tunnels. Now, look, this is going to be investigated when in due time. It will be investigated and looked at. So I think we need to be careful about doing too much speculation about what happened. It's certainly other things that make you scratch your head. Well, how did this happen? But look, we lived through 9/11. How did this happen?
Exactly.
And understand, I went to bed at 11 o'clock Friday night, October 6th. I woke up less than 2 hours later and the world had completely changed.
Yeah.
And that's when I gave my talk, these things will happen, as these characters talked about in a Hemingway novel. How did you go bankrupt? And the one guy says, well, I went bankrupt two ways. I went bankrupt gradually then suddenly. And I think this is how the prophecies that we have in the Bible will unfold. It will be gradual, almost imperceptible. Then all of a sudden, where did that come from? But look at what has happened in our culture, Dave. You do Worldview Matters. Look at what happened in our culture. It seems like all of a sudden we have this problem with the LGBTQ, transgender, this and that, cultural Marxism,
delusion
stuff. And it's like it came suddenly, didn't it?
Yeah,
No, it was gradual for a long time.
Well, John, I just want to clarify something. When I said some are maybe wondering if this was an inside job in Israel, it didn't mean Israel did it. It mean there were spies or Palestinians or others that got in somehow. They were in Israel and they either got jobs or how long this took. Who knows how long this took to plan and be carried out. But I want to go to Psalm 83, which says, God, do not remain quiet. Do not be silent. Do not be still, O God, for behold, your enemies make an uproar, and those who hate you have exalted themselves. They make shrewd plans against your people and conspire together against your treasured ones. They have said, come and let us wipe them out as a nation, that the name of Israel be remembered no more. For they have conspired together with one mind. Against you they make a covenant. And then it goes on. That's from Psalm 83. Very prophetic, whether it's specific to our times now. You can't deny this happening. Do you want to comment on that before we continue?
It is specific to our times. And I understand what you meant. Some people are saying the Israeli government planned this. That's why, and I'm seeing these videos going around. I think we need to be very careful about this and give credit to the Iranians, are very intelligent people. As I was discussing with someone in Israel this morning, the Iranians, they claim that they invented chess. And by the way, the follow-on is the Russians perfected it. That's why we have some of the problems in the world that we do today. And then I said, well, did the Iranians really invent it, or did they just make you think they invented it? But there clearly was some kind of attack that blinded people. It was a holiday.
Yeah.
Things were unprepared, but it was very difficult over the geographic region to get. Israel relies a lot on reserves. The people had to drive sometimes 3-4 hours to get there to help as an Army Reserve person. And a lot were on holiday. So there's a lot of accountability that needs to take place. Yeah. This was well-timed. I'm not sure that the rocket attacks that happened in the past were not preparatory to this operation. In other words, they threw the rockets in there to weaken the fence and also to see how the people reacted. And they knew everybody went to their safe room. And they knew that the people were largely unarmed. They're peaceful people in the kibbutzes and that type of thing. They're soft. You could call them soft targets.
Yeah.
And my feed is full. I believe if you go to Israel 365, they have a PDF document you can get of all the people that have been killed. It's whole families, father, mother, 3 beautiful young daughters killed, slaughtered.
Yeah.
There was one instance where they found the parents in an embrace outside of the safe room. They had fought off the terrorists, been killed, and I then believe their bodies burned. They were found in an embrace. And then 14 hours later, somebody after they were found, went to the safe room and found their 14-month-old twins still there, growing up now with no parents. 100 hostages, more than 100 hostages have been taken to Gaza. The last I saw, the 25 Americans who were in this area of Israel have been killed, and there are probably at least 11 Americans that are being held hostage in Gaza by Hamas. And that makes the operation to go in very difficult. You don't want to do anything to kill hostages, but at this point, you have to do the best you can because you have a bigger mission involved. And it's I'm sad to say, but the pictures are horrific. I saw it. I don't know if we have enough time before the break, but saw a picture of a young gal who was brought in a vehicle. She was taken out of the back, and I noticed that in the crotch area of her pants as she was being pushed in, that it was soiled.
Yep. I saw that.
And I thought, oh, she must have lost her control of her bowels being so scared. She was brutally raped. That was blood from being raped. And then she was thrown in the back of that military vehicle and shot and killed.
Jeez.
And this is there was a party down there, and they were dancing to some Hindu god or something. It was a bunch of New Age people. There were about 1,000 there. At least 250 bodies from that have been found. I saw a picture of them. They were stacked in a tent. So I've seen pictures of trailers of body bags with baby body bags.
Yeah.
You want it body bags with babies in them, folks. And listen, whether they're beheaded or not, the fact of the matter is this is a crime against humanity, and we need to focus on that.
It's pure evil. Now, we only have a couple minutes left. Let's talk about briefly the historical ignorance. Only a day after the Hamas terrorists infiltrated Israel and wreaked havoc there, pro-Palestine protesters took to the streets in America and Toronto and London, but in D.C., New York City, San Francisco, Seattle, Chicago, Philadelphia, Harvard University in Cambridge, also Black Lives Matter in Chicago, tweeted an image, "I stand with Palestine." So the New York City protest organized by Democrat socialists. So John, in our country, there are people celebrating this. We only have 2.5 minutes roughly. Okay. Please, your quick thoughts.
So this is anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish hatred on display on an epic scale. This is very, very concerning to me. I would recommend you follow or get Olivier Melnick's book on the rise of the new anti-Semitism in his website, the new anti-Semitism. Check that out. It will give you some information. But where does this go? Right now, we're in the midst of this operation in Gaza. We have a carrier battle group that's there. I'm getting intel reports that Hezbollah may have been given special anti-ship missiles to take out our ships that are there in the Eastern Mediterranean. And they've been given those by Russia. Syria has threatened to come into the war. The IDF issued a statement that said, if you come in, we will take out the Assad regime and we will destroy Damascus. Now, that raises a Bible prophecy thing. In Isaiah 17, it says that at some point, and I think this is a future prophecy, Damascus will cease from being a city. Damascus, which touts itself as the longest continuously occupied city on planet Earth, will cease from being a city. Now, are we at that time? I don't know. We're living in biblical times. I don't think we need to be arguing right now about what is this Bible prophecy or that Bible prophecy. We can talk about it. I will tell you, in the conservative community of so-called Christians in America, they are blaming people who believe in Bible prophecy that this is all of our fault.
Jeez.
I can show you the tweets.
Oh my goodness.
They take a picture who says, we need to support Israel. These these Christians are trying to bring Armageddon. They're the ones who are responsible for this. So it's just like the Islamists do. It's the Saturday people first, then the Sunday people. Even Christians are doing this. This is going to be incredibly divisive in the church. Where does this go from here? I think we're seeing that there's going to be, the question is there going to be a war in the north? This is the fear. And they have many more rockets. Iron Dome can't defend them. People have been told in parts of Israel to leave their homes and go to the south. There have been pictures I've just seen recently on Twitter as we're recording this of caravans of Muslim women and children in vans and that type of thing leaving northern Israel and going to Jordan. Are they evacuating this for a coming war? I think it's inevitable at this point. And I think that what I would encourage the church to do right now is this is a biblical moment. And I think we need to stand for Israel. This is not to countenance everything that Israel has ever done. That's not the point. But in the Bible, we are commanded to pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
The God of the Bible and Jesus Christ are jealous for Zion.
Yeah.
And we need to understand that this is a biblical moment where the church has to understand the apocryphal nature, the end time nature, and the revealing nature of all these things that are going to happen that are centered around Israel. This isn't, as I said, listen, I did a conference in Scotland.
We're out of time, John.
Okay.
We have to wrap it up. We will do this again. I know it goes by so fast. Well, I appreciate it. We can go on for hours, and I thank you for all the research you do. Look up that interview, guys, with John on his website, on the YouTube channel. Blessings, brother.
Thank you, David.
All right, friends, tomorrow, Dr. J.B. Hickson will talk a little bit more about Israel and his take, and we'll talk about his brand new book, The Spirit of the False Prophets. So, J.B. tomorrow. God bless you guys, and as always, keep speaking the truth about things that matter.